I can see nothing on YouTube.
Just give it a couple of seconds.
Okay.
For some reason, it's the stream is very slow, but I can see it coming. Okay, now we are live on YouTube.
Okay.
Let's start. Just want to welcome everybody to okay. Just let me mute. All right, so let me welcome everybody here today to a new session about service desk. Let me introduce our esteemed guest. Matthew Burrows is a past president of Institute of Service Management, contributor to service management and project management standards and publications, member of SFIA Council and the Global Design Authority for SFIA. SFIA actually stands for Skills Framework for Information Age, and we are actually living in the information age. Internationally recognized thought leader, SFIA accredited consultant and trainer, Matthew works with companies and governments to improve digital skills management maturity and how to attract and develop and retain digital ICT, cybersecurity, and other technology-focused professionals. And this is actually the core of our topic today. So I want to welcome you, Matthew, in our name and in my name and Tony and SDFA to a really exciting episode. So I want you to take over, and the floor is all yours.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that introduction, and thank you for introducing me to, inviting me to speak to you today. Let me just share my screen, and let's just check with you that you can all see my shared screen there.
We can, yes.
Very clear.
Great. Okay, so as you can see on the screen, I'm starting with a cartoon. Quite often a cartoon is a humorous way of getting a point across, but this cartoon is based on a real conversation that I had with a CIO in an organization not very long ago. You can see here in the top left, the service desk manager needs another resource for their service desk. We also have the Chief Information Security Officer who needs a digital forensics specialist. So Has-Been, the boss here, has told them both to log the vacancy request in the new human resources system. And within that HR system, and this is again a real case, a lot of these generic HR systems only have a limited number of skills and competencies that they allow you to pick from. And one of the most popular ones, only 8 competencies in the system that you can pick from. So of course, you've got these two people, the service desk manager, the Chief Information Security Officer, both trying to find the right skills that they need in order to describe the vacancy that they have so that this job can be advertised. So they try and, the service desk manager knows that they need somebody who's not just going to log incidents and service requests, but they're also going to be giving people access to the applications that they need permissions for. So with that information, they've gone out to recruit, and they found a candidate who seems to be a really good match, 100% match to the security competency that they both selected. But as you can see, the candidate here has a completely different type of security specialism. And this really highlights the fact that skills and competencies in our world are a little bit more complicated than you can fit into 8 different competencies. And this is where SFIA, the Skills Framework for the Information Age, comes in. And I'm going to give you a bit of a background on that and how you might get some value from it.
Yeah, Matthew, just before you continue, I just want to say to our YouTube subscribers that you can subscribe to our channel so you can have future notifications. And whatever you have also questions in Zoom and in YouTube, please do ask them in the chat area so we can take them on in the time of questions later. Thank you.
Absolutely. No, that's great. Thank you for that. So before I start sort of giving you a bit of an overview of Sophia, let's just have a look at the general situation. And this isn't unique to service desks. This is really any type of digital, IT, technology related specialism. A lot of organizations going through digital transformations. And the surveys from the analyst organizations show us that actually there's quite a low level of confidence from some of our executives that we have the right skills that will help us to deliver these transformational activities we're involved in. If we back that up with some other statistics here, so 71% of chief information officers reporting that skill gaps are going to directly impact their business. 75% of organizations getting visible business disruption purely because of the skill gaps that they have. So, it is quite a competitive environment with lots of skill gaps that organizations are finding. And when we look at our specialists, our technology related specialists within our organizations, when we do lose them, when they leave organizations, the biggest reason that they give is actually a lack of development opportunity. So in order to not only attract the right people, but to retain the best people with the talent, we need to make sure that we're giving them good career development opportunities. If we don't do that, we run a risk of losing them to another organization where they might see a stronger career path. We also have a situation where actually the skills that are required in the jobs and roles within our organization are changing on a fairly rapid basis as well. If you haven't seen this report from Gartner, it's worth looking up after the event. But it's actually showing that the skills that we need within a particular job, they change at least 10% year on year. So a lot of organizations that I work with, their job descriptions and their role profiles are not up to date. They perhaps wrote them 3 or 4 years ago. They're sitting there on a share somewhere. They're being used every time they have a vacancy. But because they haven't updated them recently, that is an out-of-date picture of the skills that they really need. So that's another factor that we need to bear in mind. The skills that people have changes on a regular basis as they do development activity, and the skills that they need in their role change because of the changing requirements driven by our business, by the market, by our customers. Nothing stands still. So if we look at organizations that are doing well in this space at managing their people and their skills and competencies, there are some common traits that we see in these organizations that are doing well. The first thing that they're doing is actually confirming the skills that they have. So answering the "what skills do we have" question. It's a little bit like satellite navigation. To get a really good route plan to get you to where you want to be, you actually need the system to know where you're starting from. You need to know your current point that you're at, as well as the destination that you need to get to. And the same is true for any skills journey, whether you're doing that on behalf of your organization or whether you're doing it for yourself personally, for your own development plan. So you need a skills inventory. You need to confirm the skills you have. And from doing this over the last 20 plus years, I can guarantee that every organization, when you actually go and assess what skills you really have, they are always slightly different from the skills that you thought you had. And again, they're slightly different from the skills that you need. So the first thing for all organizations is do that skills inventory. Answer the "what skills do we have" question. Know where you're starting from. You will get some positive surprises. You will find some skills that you didn't think you had, that you actually do have, and that because you now know you've got them, you can make use of them. That they will fill some gaps that you thought you had. But there's also some unwelcome surprises, skills that you thought you had, but it turns out you don't really have them in the organization, but you need them. And often those skill gaps are the biggest risk that we have. They tend to be the skill gaps that result in cybersecurity breaches, in business disruption, in failure to achieve the service levels that we're committed to. So whatever you do, you've got to take a view on what skills you need. You've got to take a view on what skills you have in order for you to plan that journey. The second thing that these organizations are doing is using a common language to define and describe skills and competencies. And they do that by selecting an internationally adopted specialist skills framework for technology-dependent disciplines, like Sophia. And this is exactly what Sophia gives us. It's a common language for describing skills within our specialist areas. And we need a common language so we all understand each other when we're talking about the skills and competencies we need or the skills and competencies that we have. So it's really essential to have that common language that makes sense outside of your organization as well as inside your organization. The next thing these organizations that are doing well in this space are doing is they're taking a genuine interest in their people, finding out what skills and experience they already have. And that's not just the subset of skills that they have that are in their current job description. People are much more than their current job description. Even two people that do the same job that started on the same day will have a slightly different mix of skills and levels of those skills just because of the projects they've worked on, the activity they've been asked to do. So everyone's unique, and people have many more skills than are listed in their current job description. And then once you've got that picture of all of the skills that your people have, then you need to be transparent and clear about the skills that are needed. So in most organizations, that means pulling together a set of job descriptions and role profiles, making sure they're up to date. But also in this more agile type world, it can be just describing the skills you need for a sprint that's starting a week next Thursday, or a project that you're putting together. So it's not always about job descriptions and role profiles. It's whatever skills you need, whether that's for short-term or a longer-term role. And then be transparent. Let people see that information. Let them see the role profiles, the job descriptions, so they know what skills they need, not just for their current role, but perhaps for a future role that's further down their career path. So it gives them a view of the opportunity. It gives them a bit of clarity of knowing what they need to do in order to be successful and to advance. And then with that data, the what skills do we have and the what skills do we need, and making that visible, you empower the managers as well as the individuals with that data so that they can have a better conversation and to collaborate more effectively within their teams, within their departments. Give them the data that they need on skills and action plans. And then, of course, you can look at that data across the whole organization. So that supports better data-driven decision-making. And with that information, you will know what the top people and skill-related risks are. So to summarize that, the vital ingredients for any organization are really, you've got to have that common language, a consistent set of definitions for skills and competencies. So we're all using the same language. And that's what Sophia gives us. That's really what the skills framework for the information age is. Then point two, we need to use that same framework to baseline the current skills. Point three, we also need to describe the skills that are needed now and into the future, again, using that same common language of Sophia. And then once we have those two sets of data, what skills do we have, what skills do we need, we can do some gap analysis between those two data sets. And then we can use that in our career development action plans, whether that's from an individual perspective, whether you're looking across your whole team, perhaps across the service desk, you need a certain mix of skills and not necessarily everybody to have the same skills within the team. So you might look at it across the team. You could, of course, look at it across the department or, of course, across the whole organization. So that's learning from experience. Those are the things that organizations that are doing well in this space are nailing. That's what they're getting right, first of all. So I just invite you to think about your own organization for a few minutes. What are your priority challenges? Maybe you're worried that you don't necessarily have the right skills and competencies to prevent cybersecurity incidents. Maybe it's about operating your processes and your operating model. Maybe it's at the core level of making sure you deliver service to the agreed service levels. Do you have the right skills to resolve the incidents or even to prevent those incidents from happening? So each organization is going to have a slightly different set of priorities when it comes to these challenges, but these are some of the most common ones that I come up against. There is a maturity scale to support this, and I'll give you a link at the end of the presentation where any of you can go and on behalf of your organization, it take you about 5 or 10 minutes to do a quick online survey, which will tell you where your organization is on this digital skills management maturity curve. So I won't go through the detail here, but as I say, I'll give you the link later so that if you want to know where you are as an organization, you can baseline that. And it'll give you a report as an output, which will show you where you need to be, a bit of SWOT analysis on that, and some guidance for getting from where you are now to where you need to be on this maturity scale.
I will be eagerly waiting for that, I think.
No problem.
So far I'm writing two links, one for Gartner, one for...
And I've included a few more links on this slide as well. So there is a link here to the Sophia Foundation website. There's also a link to a YouTube video which just gives you a 2-minute overview of Sophia. We'll make sure that these slides are shared with everybody and made available. I can post them on the Skills TX website, but I'm sure you have a site that we can make them available as well, so that you can make use of all of these links. But really, if you haven't heard of Sophia, the skills framework for the information age, it is just that, a common language, a common set of descriptions for skills and competencies for any role involving information and communications technology. It's available in, I think it's about 11 or 12 languages at the moment, and that includes Arabic as well. I'm doing a lot of work with the government in Saudi Arabia at the moment to support their adoption of Sophia. So it's available in multiple languages. You can go to the Sophia website, you can download the content, you can register on there. So I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of some of that content, but I'm going to keep it fairly brief just to give you a high level view, and then you've got the links to go and look at a bit more detail. You'll find in that Sophia material, it describes how Sophia really is focused not just on what you know, it's actually about what you do. Skills aren't just about knowledge. Of course, you have to acquire knowledge. You have to know what you need to know in order to do something. But the development of skill is actually when you get the opportunity to apply that knowledge in a real working environment. That's when you turn it into a skill. And as you practice that skill time and time again, you become even more competent and proficient in that skill. And that's really where we talk about developing a competency. So skill perhaps is the ability to do something. You may have done it in a simulated environment, perhaps in a working environment. When you master that skill, it becomes a fully professional competency. So when you see Sophia, it actually describes what you do. Your skill is all about what you can do and what you do. So knowledge is important, qualifications are important, training are important, but you've also got to have the opportunity to put it into practice. So Sophia focuses on professional skills with experience at the heart of it. There's also part of Sophia that covers what some people refer to as soft skills and behavioral aspects. And I'll take you through that as well and give you a quick overview of those things. So on this slide, I've just given an example of different people, different types of users of Sophia. So all of us on this call are professionals in this space. As individuals, we need to know where we are. So we need to assess our current skills. We need to then look at our potential gaps by perhaps comparing our skills with job descriptions and role profiles, perhaps the requirements for professional development, and to put that into an action plan to further develop the skills and competencies that we need. But of course, line managers are also using that to support their teams. It's being used at an organizational level for overall workforce planning through a number of different initiatives. And I won't go through each of these, but you can see how Sophia is used by human resources, learning and development, in recruitment, in consultancy and professional services. Even in procurement, when you're comparing different suppliers and third-party vendors with each other, Sophia can be used for that, as well as for professional bodies, industry bodies, and in education. So in universities with training companies as well, to map their educational programs to Sophia, to make sure they're offering people the opportunity to develop the skills and competencies that are needed.
So Matthew, I can see process consultants also, they use Sophia.
Yes.
This is where it will give a big value for IT governance programs such as COVID 2019, such as ITIL 4, ISO 20000, and many other standards or best practice. They can use Sophia so they can get more details about the roles of their processes, etc.
Absolutely, yeah. So if you look at COBIT and ITIL, they both reference Sophia, and actually, whilst COBIT and ITIL explain sometimes some of the roles and some of the processes and what people do, they then refer you to Sophia to define the skills and competencies are needed to do those things. On the Sophia Foundation website, you'll find mappings of to COBIT, for example. So for each of those controls within COBIT, you need a certain mix of skills at different levels. And there are some suggested standard profiles for that. So yes, if you're using any of these other frameworks, certainly you can use Sophia alongside those to help you. They're very, very useful.
So mainly you are bringing all these people together. You're bringing the recruiter with the procurement, with the human resources all together. So you are creating this bridge between these people. And usually there is like there is no link between IT people and human resource.
That's right, and and both sides are quite often very frustrated because they don't necessarily, they're not able to understand each other. Because if you say to somebody, I need a business analyst, one person's business analyst in their mind is just about writing requirement specifications. Another person's business analyst might also, in addition to writing requirement specifications, do acceptance tests, contribute to business cases. They're a different mix of skills. So it's the same with the service desk. Two different service desks might have very different scope. Therefore, you can't just say, I need a service desk analyst. You need to define what do they do. Are they just logging incidents and routing them? Well, that's a certain mix of skills. But actually, if you also need your service desk analysts to give people access permissions to their to applications, that's a different skill within Sophia. If you need them to provide application support, that's a different skill. If you need them to install remotely software or change the configuration of systems, they are distinct skills. So you can't rely on just the job title. You have to go down into the next level of detail to identify what do they need to do, and therefore what skills and at which level do they need them. And that's really what Sophia gives us. So on the soft skills, on the behavioral side of Sophia, it describes 5 different generic levels of responsibility characteristics. So autonomy, influence, complexity, knowledge, and business skills. So within the structure of Sophia, it has 7 levels. And a level 1 is perhaps an entry level, where somebody is following a well-defined script. They don't have a lot of experience or discretion that they can apply. If things don't go how they're expected, they seek guidance from somebody who's more experienced. So that's a good example of level 1. And you can see that here in the descriptions for these 5 characteristics: works under supervision, little discretion, minimal influence. So an entry-level skill. Now, as you move up the levels in Sophia, levels 1 to 4 still tend to be task-orientated, but with an increasing level of influence and control over the outcome of those tasks. So perhaps your subject matter experts, your team leaders, would be typically operating at levels 3 and level 4. Perhaps your managers would be operating at level 4, level 5. Your senior managers who are setting policy and strategy across the whole of the IT function might be operating more at level 6. And your chief information officers and that level, probably a lot of their skills tend to be at level 6 and 7. So that's one aspect of Sophia, the generic levels of responsibility. But we also have this other part. Sorry, Rudy.
I'm going to interrupt you. Before you continue, so let's say, those big 4, PwC and the rest of the companies, and I've seen also Hey for working on, the human resources skills and so on. Do they actually use this framework, such a framework, or not actually, or it is more related to the information technology? So, or no, this is a general framework that works on everything. And actually the big 4 or the other, famous companies they actually adopted and work on it, or there's another also framework possibly.
Yeah, it's a mixed picture, as you might imagine. That Hey and other frameworks like that quite often are used in conjunction with Sophia. There aren't really any other international frameworks. There are a couple of local frameworks in individual countries. There's a European framework as well, but nothing with the scope and penetration of Sophia. But of course, these organizations will be for other disciplines using other frameworks to describe their skills as well, because Sophia really only tries to focus on the technology-related professional skills. So it doesn't describe what catering staff do. Yeah, it's just about technology-related disciplines. And you'll see that reflected within there's currently 102 professional skills within the current version of Sophia, which is Sophia version 7. Again, we use this 7-level structure for those skills, but those skills are they're organized into 6 categories, and you can see the 6 categories on the screen there. And I'll give you a quick overview of the types of skills that it covers so that you can see what's included. So I won't spend very long on this, but you'll have these slides to look at later. But in the strategy and architecture category, that's where we get things like enterprise IT governance, where you mentioned COBIT, for example, information security, analytics, data visualization that you'll see in a lot of data scientists, consultancy, even financial management within an IT setting, business process improvement, enterprise architecture, solution architecture, those types of skills. Within the next category, which is change and transformation, that's where you'll find your project, program, and portfolio management skills, as well as business analysis, organizational design, and those sorts of things. Then the next category, the yellow category, is more the build and implement type skills. So development and implementation, so system development management, software design, programming, database design, a whole bunch of user experience skills, which are used in a lot of agile type environments, and everything through to system installation and decommissioning. And then perhaps when we look at the service desk, this next category will be one of the most relevant ones to service desk roles. So delivery and operation, you can see things like incident management, problem management, IT infrastructure, application support. You've got security administration, service level management, a lot of IT service management related terms that you'll recognize here. So it has good alignment to things like ITIL and ISO 20000. So a lot of these skills are the ones that you would perhaps pick from initially when you're trying to work out what skills you need in your service desk. But there are some other categories that will be relevant as well. So this next one, skills and quality, it covers learning and learning delivery and competency assessment, but it also covers things like performance management, resourcing, and professional development. So your service desk manager, your service desk supervisors would certainly need those skills. Any team leaders, any managers would need some of those skills. It's got things like performance review, which auditors would need, for example, as well as quality management. And then the last of the categories, this also would be relevant, and customer service support as a skill is found in almost all service desk related roles. You've got to have those customer support skills as well as incident management and the other skills as well. And in some cases, some of these others will be relevant. Relationship management, perhaps if you've got third parties involved, you might have contract management and supplier management required in some of your roles as well. Okay, so that gives you a quick overview of the breadth of Sophia. You can see the skills cover quite a wide range, but it is all technology related specialisms rather than trying to be more general and generic across all disciplines. So even when it covers sales and marketing type skills, they are sales and marketing activity within a technology related setting. Okay. Now, in terms of adopting Sophia in your organization, there are some typical approaches. And I've given an example here. Obviously, with any project, you need to address the management of change activities, make sure that people understand what you're doing and why. But then once you've communicated to the people what you're doing and how it's going to help them, and then you usually move into an assessment phase, so focusing on answering the what skills do we have question. Quite often that's done through self-assessment. And again, I'll give you a link at the end of this session for anybody that wants to do their own self-assessment. It'll take you somewhere around 45 to 60 minutes to do an assessment against Sophia. But if you haven't done one, really useful to do and know exactly where you are in Sophia terms. So that's the first phase, assessing. You might have a level of review if you're doing this in your organization, where perhaps the managers would help people to refine their self-assessed profiles, perhaps do some level of approval and validation. Then the next thing is to do that role profiling, to answer the what skills do we have, map your existing job descriptions or role profiles to Sophia so that both sets are using that same language. And then you're ready to start the analysis. With those data sets, you can do that data analysis, you can do the gap analysis, and you can use it to support your decisions on developing skills, buying skills in, if you need more recruitment, borrowing them from third parties if you're engaging contractors, contingent workers, or suppliers. So that's a fairly typical flow for how an organization would adopt Sophia. couple of things to show you that there are some standardized role profiles as examples which you can use. There are some from various governments, bodies, which I've listed on here. Of particular interest to a lot of people on the call, I've been working with the Ministry for Communications and Information Technology and other departments within the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, within the government there. And we now have a set of standardized occupations for Saudi Arabia that are mapped to Sophia. And those are due to be published very soon. So if you haven't looked at it before, I've included the website for MCIT that talks about the digital skills framework, which is Sophia. And it's been adopted by the government across Saudi Arabia. So we're rolling that out and helping people with training and all of those sorts of things right now. So there's a link to find out a bit more of that about that if you're based in Saudi. That would be useful to you. Okay, so a couple of other things, some people do worry when they're adopting something like Sophia, it's slightly outside their comfort zone. As technologists, we're used to implementing new technologies. We're not always that comfortable with talking about our skills and competencies. It's a lot easier than most people think. It can be done in a matter of a few weeks, doing your assessments, doing your role profiling, getting the data ready so that you can then apply it in your development planning. So I've included a typical timeline for doing that within an organization. So it's very much achievable within only a few weeks. And a couple of tips for when you're doing your self-assessment. You want to capture all of the skills of an individual, not just the skills they happen to be using in their current role, because particularly we found this within the COVID situation we've had recently, where perhaps people have been asked to resurrect skills from earlier on in their career so they can cover for people that have been unavailable due to sickness or other challenges. So knowing all of the skills that you have available within your workforce is a lot more important than just the subset of skills for current role. You also, when you're assessing, you want to capture all of the levels of a skill that someone has practiced at. So right the way down from the low levels through to the high levels, you need to understand that breadth of their experience. And often during the course of any role, we will be at different times during the day practicing a skill at different levels. Sometimes the service desk manager may be practicing the incident management skill at level 5 because they're supervising other people in that process. But when things are busy, they may need to pick up the phone and log incidents themselves. They're using that same skill, but they're using it perhaps at level 2 and level 3. So you capture all of the levels that are relevant. Also, we need to recognize that skills are not binary. You don't either have a skill or not. Sometimes people have partially developed a skill, and you need to recognize that as well, so that actually you recognize what they've already developed, but you recognize there's still a gap to fully developing and mastering that skill. So it's not binary yes or no. There are different levels of largely developed through to fully developed and mastered. And then in addition to the professional skills, don't forget those generic levels of responsibility, those softer skills, how we influence, how we work within teams, the level of complexity that we deal with, the bodies of knowledge that we use. In business skills, it covers things like communication skills. All of those are critically important. It's not just about those hard professional skills, but also those other ones. If we don't have those at the right level, it doesn't matter how clever we are with our specialist skills, our professional skills, we're still going to struggle if we haven't got those other elements right. So we need to assess those as well. And then, of course, once you've got that, you've got those two data sets, you need to maintain it, because as people complete development activity, they need to update their skill profile to reflect the new skills that they've developed. As your skill requirements change over time, You need to also update your role profiles. And then when you reflect those things in your development plans, remember some of it's about formal training, but quite often people might be familiar with the 70-20-10 principle. Generally, 10% of your development is formal off-the-job training. 20% is near the job with feedback and coaching and mentoring and support. And 70% of it is actually on the job. You know, thinking in your development plans, are we giving people the right training, but also are we allowing them to shadow other people so they can learn on the job? Are we giving them the opportunity to do something perhaps under supervision in order to develop a skill? So all of those things need to be thought about in someone's development plan, not just the training. So once we've done that, each individual is going to have their own skill profile, a Sophia-based skill profile, which might look something like this. It's on the screen at the moment. But then, of course, you'll also have been developing your job descriptions and role profiles. So I've given a couple of examples here. So this is a service desk analyst, a typical job description. You know, they need a certain level of autonomy and influence and complexity and so on. In this particular example, yes, they're doing the standard sort of incident management and customer service support skills. In this example, they're also required, as with that cartoon at the beginning, to do a little bit of security administration, perhaps password resets, perhaps giving people permission to applications, and then also optionally a little bit of application support. Now, when you build your own role profiles for your service desk, you'll need to add in the skills that are needed. Perhaps some of these won't be needed in all roles, but there might be some other skills from Sophia that you want to add in. It's different for each organization. So whilst you can start from templates like this, you still need to adopt and adapt it so that it fits how you operate as an organization and the particular activities you do within each role. So that's perhaps a good example of a service desk analyst role. If you're the service desk manager, your skills might be at a slightly higher level. Some of those skills will be the same skills. Some of them will be different skills where they need to also manage some people. So they need some performance management. Perhaps they need some relationship management skills to work with the stakeholders that they're having to manage and deal with. So that's another example of a role profile there. But once everybody's got their own skill profile, and once you've got the role profiles available, of course, each individual can compare the requirements of a role. They can overlay that on their skill profile, and they can see where their potential gaps and development needs are. And then once they know those gaps, they can start to build their own action plan of the things that they need to do in order to address those gaps. And they can work with their manager to do that. And their manager might help prioritize those. And perhaps you're going to start with the skill gaps that are relevant to your current job or role before starting to look at skills that you need for the next step in your career. Okay. So everybody should have a skill profile. Everybody should have a development plan. And if you've got the role profiles and job descriptions done, you're in a good starting point. Okay, so I've taken you through quite a lot of content. So you'll be probably pleased to hear this is the last slide here before we take questions. I've suggested some next steps for you. I'm familiar, you know, some of the people on the call will be looking at this on behalf of their organization. So if you're doing it on behalf of your organization, you're thinking about it from a management perspective, then spend 10 minutes doing that digital skills management maturity assessment. Know where you're starting from, get some advice and guidance on how to move to where you want to be. So that's free. It'll only take you 10 minutes of your time, gives you some material you can start to share internally. Think it will also lay out some options for approaching a Sophia implementation and adoption and various options that are available to you. And then once you've decided, which approach you prefer, start. Start with answering the what skills do we have question, assess the people in the organization for their current skills, take a view on the skills that you need, and then start using Sophia in that gap analysis and development planning. If you're looking at it as an individual from your own career development perspective, then start with a Sophia self-assessment. And I've given you a link there where you can click that and you can do that online yourself, again, free of charge. Do that self-assessment. On that free system, you've also got a number of industry-defined role profiles, so you can compare your skills against those templated roles, and you can build your own development action plan as well. So hopefully that presents you with a good set of options for moving from where you are moving forward, whether you're looking at it from your own perspective as an individual professional or on behalf of your organization. So with that, I'll sort of hand back to see if we've got any questions that anybody would like me to answer.
Thank you for that, Matthew. It was, I think, I knew about Sophia, but once you know it from, an expert, it's actually really different. It's much clearer for me even. I used it before. It was harder. Now I think it's more, easier to really understand. So far, we ran a poll. So if you mind, please just answering the poll so we understand better your response towards this session. If you need more information, please don't forget to ask or raise your hand if you have any question, because I got on the WhatsApp some questions. And so if you want to really, Hussam, please open your microphone and go ahead.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Thank you for the session. It was really amazing. Honestly, this is the first time I hear about this model, Sophia.
Yeah.
But I was reading a book last time for Jim Collins about good to great companies, and I just found like maybe a common framework. Also, he described the strategy about the company like a bus, and the seats inside are the job roles. So he was saying that before we proceed with the strategy, we need to put the right employees with the right skills. So I can see that Sophia is essential part if we use it to proceed with the strategy of the company.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would like to
mind stopping the share.
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
I can see where's Omar? Hussam.
Yeah.
All right.
And also I'm trying to understand the model. For example, there is a slide talking about the IT operation infrastructure, and it starts from the beginning, from first until number 4. So it doesn't continue till the end. If Matthew can explain this to me again, just to understand why it's from 1 to 4 and doesn't continue for 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, the Sophia skills are described at all of the levels at which we find them in the working world. So what you quite often find is that some skills perhaps in one category are described at lower levels, because actually the higher level is a different skill. It's somewhere else within Sophia. So as an example, things you mentioned, sort of IT infrastructure, which is described at levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. Well, really at levels 5, 6, and 7, that's actually covered by a different skill called IT management, where it's looking not just at the transactional task-related elements for the infrastructure, but looking at the overall planning of the infrastructure, the management of all of the infrastructure elements and how they're designed, procured, implemented, turned off at the end of their life as well. So it is covered in Sophia. It's split into a different skill called IT management. And it covers some other aspects as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for your comments about not hearing of Sophia. That does come up a lot. And the Sophia Foundation is a not-for-profit organization. Most people that use Sophia don't pay to use it. It's available free to download for non-commercial use. So of course that means there's not a big marketing budget. So if you haven't happened to hear about it, then you don't know and you can't get value from it. So that's partly why I try and take every opportunity to do presentations like this to share the usefulness of Sophia. Because if you haven't heard about it, you know about it now, and have a look and make use of it. It will be beneficial.
Sure, I will. And HR should use it. Should use this framework, especially for in the hiring process and in coordination with IT, so to get the right people.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hassan. We took the poll. We have 8 answers that this was beneficial. Thank you a lot. This appreciates, what we are trying to do. So if you have any questions also, please, from YouTube.
Yeah, I have a question.
I have also some questions after you. I want the links. I think it's time for the links.
Yes, Matthew, you said it's free. Everyone can use it. Everyone can benefit from Sophia.
Yeah.
What about contribution to Sophia? Like if someone would like to help in defining maybe new roles,
Yes, I didn't mention that. Very good. So the Sophia Foundation website, we have a completely open and transparent change process on there. So anybody from anywhere around the world can contribute their ideas. So if you go on there at the moment, you'll see that we're doing exactly that, ready for the next version of Sophia version 8. So anybody can log a change request. Sometimes it's as simple as, I don't think Sophia covers this area, and they describe the area. Other times it's more detailed. We've got a skill that we think needs a level 7 description or a level 3 description. It could be that sort of thing, or just a question: how does Sophia cover X? Yeah, so that's quite a lively change forum on there. Anybody can log a question. You can see what other people have logged. You can contribute your points of view and your examples, and you can also see what we're planning in the next version and make comments on it. So that's all on the Sophia Foundation website.
Thank you. Yeah.
Do you think we can find any tool, not just templates, I'm sure there are templates, but tools online by community or something to help us even, have a better adoption?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, obviously, I'm slightly biased. My own organization, we have our tools, the Skills TX tool. There are some other tools providers as well. We're all listed on the Sophia Foundation website. So go in and have a look at that and see what's available. I'm delighted to talk to anybody who thinks we can help, either in terms of tools or Sophia training or support as well. I spend a lot of my time training people and helping them with support in implementing Sophia as well. So by all means, make contact with me if you've got a question that I haven't been able to answer on this call. Happy to pick that up via email or LinkedIn or whatever method. Make contact with me. That's
so
fine.
We'll be also sending, hopefully by Monday, an email with the replay and your contact information, of course. So to our network, inclusive of whoever attended today and who didn't. So that will be great. And then hopefully when we get the links also, this will help also to understand, or maybe to download it and start reading this material. And I'm excited. I'm also excited to see the KSA adoption of this, because they have a big vision. 2030 is
That's right.
big vision.
Yeah.
And working hard to achieve it and become really one of the top. Their target is one of the top 10 economies in the world.
Absolutely right. Yeah. And they're well on track to do that. I'm doing training of assessors for an accreditation scheme based on Sophia, starting on Sunday. So you know, we're in the middle of implementation of all of those components to really support.
So throughout the Middle East and you know, the MENA region, or let's call them the Arab region. This is what Service Desk Forum Arabia is about. There has been an increase in such need and increase in knowledge, increase in talents. There's new talents and new skills coming. I don't know if Sophia, now I'm intrigued to see if it's covering, you know, the AI, all of these emergent technologies that are there that really are taking the world by storm, and where we are teaching skills today that will not exist in the next 10 years, where we need new skills to really, you know, have the future jobs, which really the jobs today, they don't exist. So it's a vice versa. Double-edged.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. So if you have, anybody has a question, anybody wants to raise his hand, open his microphone, so we can have some more questions about the topic. Would you mind sharing a couple of links for the Gartner at least, and the other one, so you know they can take them, and we will also get them from you with an email later on, so we can really share them. Thank you, George. Thank you. I had a question also because they wanted to know how to download it, but that was on WhatsApp, so we will send it to you also, to all of the people who attended. Very interesting framework.
Very, very nice session. Thank you, Matthew. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Sure. We'll wait 1 minute. Meanwhile, if you have any links to share, and we will conclude if there's no further. I don't know, Antoine, if you want to have a further discussion about, you know, how can we take this, I think, and implement it into, you know, what's, I would ask you, Matthew, what's the first thing we do or you can do in each organization to really start thinking about Sophia and you know, in your current environment or in our current environment? You're on mute. Matthew?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was just finding the unmute button. Yeah, I always advise organizations to start with the answering the what skills do we have question, because you need to know where you're starting from. It's that's the essential starting point. So you need to obviously do a bit of communication, because if you just say to people, answer these questions, they obviously want to understand why and how it's going to be used and how it's going to help them. So a little bit of communication, but if you can explain to people this is to help baseline their current skills, to help give them the support they need for their development planning, and the implementation of that development plan, that's usually the best place to start, because if you do the assessment, you could just compare the skills you have against the Sophia framework, and you can see which skills you don't have in the organization. So even if you haven't done the role profiling and defined what skills you need in each role, you can still see where your overall potential gaps are. And you can say, actually, that gap in digital forensics, that's not a problem to us, because we always buy that in from a supplier. The radio frequency engineering, perhaps we don't need it in our organization. Yeah, so there are going to be some skills that you don't need. So even at that level, it's useful. So you can see how many people you have with each skill. So that's the best starting point, is do that first. What skills do we have? Know what skills you have at an individual level and across the organization. Then you can start with the next steps, which is defining what you need and do the gap analysis. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think this is very valuable, you know, to kickstart something in an easy way so you can grab it, because there's a lot of change, there's a lot of new terms, a lot of material now.
Yeah.
So that's it. From my part, I think that's it. Antoine, if you have anything, or from the audience.
So thank you very much.
Thank you for the links. The links have been shared. 2 links, one for YouTube
Yeah.
and one for Sophia to, so you can download it and read it. It's a very nice document. When do you think the version 8 will come on?
Probably September. We're right in the middle of it at the moment. The Design Authority Board meetings. It's due to be Q3. So whether it's September or October, still to be fully confirmed. But my gut feel at the moment is it's going to be more likely to be September.
Right. Thank you for that. And I have copied all the. Is that the maturity that you just shared now?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's the first one's the organizational maturity, and then the second one is for individual self-assessments. What I'll do is I'll email you a PDF version of the slides so that you can then share that or post that wherever you need that to be.
Sure. We're gonna be posting also on our website, some new section related to all of these sessions and based on the topic, so you can have all the data related to it. All right. So with that, I would say we conclude. Thank you a lot, Matthew. I think very valuable. Lovely meeting you before and now, and really I'm sure you will be hearing from me more now that we are, more. All right. Thank you for that. Have a great weekend. And I would like to thank all the participants today. And really have a great weekend and see you soon. We have a session, I think, towards the end of April, if I'm not mistaken, the third week of April.
Yes, true.
So stay tuned and you will be informed. All right.
All right.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
And see you later.
You too. Take care. Bye.